Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, life support for a high-profile bill? Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham says her push to hold more people in jail before trial isn't dead yet.
I think it doesn't have to just be like the federal standard, which is what I introduced, but stay tuned, because I think we might have another path forward.
And a list of names and conflicting timelines. Two journalists explain what we know and what we don't 2 weeks after news broke about the FBI corruption investigation of the Albuquerque Police Department's DWI unit. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm senior producer Lou DeVizio. We're still working to get our arms around news of a federal investigation of alleged corruption in the Albuquerque Police Department's DWI unit. Since the story broke 2 weeks ago, there's been plenty of speculation and lots of dot connecting, but few clear answers from official sources. In about 30 minutes, executive producer Jeff Proctor sits down with the Albuquerque Journal's Matthew Risen and Elise Kaplan of City Desk ABQ to go through what we know, what we don't, and what may be to come. As climate change continues to throw new obstacles our state's way, Our Land's Laura Paskus is shifting her focus for 2024 to how New Mexicans can adapt. Later on in the show, Laura talks with Jeff about her plans for the year ahead. But first, we turn our attention to the state capitol. We're halfway through this year's 30-day legislative session, and a couple of days past the deadline for elected officials to introduce new bills at the Roundhouse. The final tally of bills and resolutions stands just shy of 700, and we've already seen several major gun control proposals endorsed by the governor advance through the process. Senate Bill 69, which would require a 14-day waiting period to purchase a firearm, passed the Senate Health and Public Affairs Committee. And the upper chamber has passed Senate Bill 5, which would ban guns inside all statewide polling places and within 100 feet of a main entrance during early voting days and Election Day. That vote on that bill was 26-16. We're also seeing progress on bills related to the environment, education, the state Children, Youth, and Families Department, and several other issues. The governor put a lot in front of lawmakers during this year's short session, something that she was quick to admit when she sat down in her office with correspondent Gwyneth Dolan this week. It's an interview you'll only see here on NMPBS, and it's one where the governor details how her agenda is progressing as the session passes its midway point.
Governor Lujan Grisham, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me on the show.
Well, we appreciate your time. It's a busy session. You took this session a multi-pronged approach to your public safety agenda. You've got a package of sort of tough on crime bills and then some gun bills, among other things. Somewhat surprisingly, the gun bills are the ones that are moving. And we would have thought those would have been a harder sell, but just this week, the banning guns in polling places and a 14-day waiting period advanced. Do incremental restrictions like this have real potential to improve New Mexicans' safety?
I believe they do, or I wouldn't do it. And I certainly wouldn't do it in a 30-day session. And you know, people are sort of pressured to do special sessions. You have to have a meaningful end result, and there has to be evidence. And there's evidence that suggests if we can curb people who should never have guns from having guns, and we don't want weapons of mass destruction anywhere in our communities. And anything I can do to prevent a mass shooting in any context is worth doing. And I am actually a little surprised that those are moving, and I would say that Albuquerque is a good example of people have had enough. They can see it. We've done thousands of arrests since the public health order, and I think people are saying, you know, I'm feeling a little bit better and safer, and the number of guns we've taken off the streets, that visual is visceral, right? You feel it. And I think that has a lot to do with this momentum.
You are very lucky as a governor to have such strong Democratic majorities in the State House and Senate.
Am I?
Well, that's funny, because is it part of your strategy, I want to know, to show that New Mexico can be a sort of a proving ground for some of the issues that animate Democrats nationwide?
Well, no. I'm really serious about public safety, and I think for far too long, Democrats don't get enough respect about the work that they're trying to do. And quite frankly, in today's political climate, you are either very conservative, so we do nothing, or you're incredibly liberal, and we could make one mistake with someone we might arrest or detain. And when we're operating in those kinds of extremes, things typically don't get better and people get more hostile in the policymaking environment. I think Democrats have to learn to talk seriously about safety. I think we have to be really clear our kids are at risk and more kids are engaged directly in gun violence, and younger and younger and younger. And to pretend that this trend isn't occurring is flat wrong. And I've learned some lessons as a politician that these are areas no one's comfortable with because it's hard to find middle ground.
How much of the problem you are trying to fight is the perception of crime?
That's a hard question to answer. I think that perception, even if the facts don't always bear out that crime is rising. So for example, you probably are aware that we can show that a lot of crime is actually headed in the right direction. It's diminishing in Albuquerque. Violent crime has been stagnant. It's still high and it's not really moving, but I think we're going to see a dip, and it's exactly what we should expect. But if we don't have the right prevention, support to families, do something about poverty, better education. The answer to crime is always jobs. Well, 110,000 jobs just in the last 3 years. It's not a perception. There is a climate around the world of animosity and anxiety. There are a lot of guns that are available far too easy. I think that we are enamored. I think there's a negative gun culture. That combination has proven to be quite disturbing and dangerous in America. And if New Mexico, and I believe we will, if we can get on top of it and squeeze it from both ends, I think people won't have a debate about perception and what stat means this or another. But when I feel safe going out in the ditches in Albuquerque, I miss them. Going for a jog at 3:30, or maybe it's a little bit late, summer, 6 o'clock by myself, I'm going to feel like I'm not quite done, because that's the community I grew up in. And everyone deserves a chance to grow up in a neighborhood where they feel that safe.
I want to talk about kids and safety, CYFD. The agency charged with protecting New Mexico's most vulnerable children is arguably broken. There is a proposal up here now that would take the agency away from the executive, away from your purview, and give it to an independent commission. Where do you stand on that?
I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, certainly there have been reports the legislature is trying to take executive power, and these are debates that aren't new. And usually this long into an administration, those debates resurface. But take a look at our boards and commissions, lots of complaints. Sometimes regents, take a look at some of our universities and whether they trend in the right direction. You create another layer of bureaucracy. And who is accountable then? One of those board members, 5 of those board members, some of those board members. CYFD in every state. Child welfare, that system is broken because we don't invest in families or in kids or in well-being, and it's in every one of my departments. That's not an excuse for issues in CYFD, but I think the public should know maybe a couple of things. Protective Services, where we do our investigations, it has less money right now with a democratically controlled majority, supermajority in the House than it did when we got here. You can't be serious about doing the investigations and catching up if you're not going to fund that. It's unfortunately, hot button issue like immigration, and it is so in every state. I don't care whether you're a Republican governor or a Democratic governor. In fact, when I ran in 2018, words like beleaguered, people who were running it not qualified, there are no staff there. And we did, in fact, we inherited a 40% vacancy rate in many of our departments, including that one. If those are the headlines, is that a department you want to work? Are you worried about that risk? You bet you are. I'm feeling like the issue I could have addressed better in 2019 is I kept hiring brilliant policymakers. But I have a lot of help on the policy. I needed managers, coaches, and I need folks who understand what it takes in a public context to deliver that personnel response to kiddos. And we are going to do a lot of policy work. The next session will be all about complete revamping of the child well-being system and different accountability so that every governor gets a fair start with CYFD, because most governors, I would argue, haven't gotten a fair start. And that means kids and their families don't get what they deserve from this state. And I bet that I can deliver that before I leave.
I want to move on to climate. You've made climate a signature issue. There are advocates out there for climate saying the number one thing that the governor could do now is lower the amount of oil and gas production that's happening in the state, lower the amount of stuff that we're pulling out of the earth. Why have you not pushed for a cap on production?
Well, I've looked at some of that caps on production, so I'm not sure that they work in the way that we think they do. Two, that doesn't stop Texas from taking all of that same oil right out, and they don't clean it up. They don't require recycled water. They don't have a methane rule. They don't change the pneumatic valves. And as weird as this sounds, and it sounds even weird to me, I'm going to say it anyway, we produce the cleanest barrel of oil, cleanest natural gas in the world. Well, it's still a fossil fuel, and it still gets burned, and it still emits greenhouse gases. But we're setting the standard, including in methane capture. You want the rest of the world that's going to keep producing oil to get where we are? Lead by example. And while you do that, more aggressively invest in renewable energy and a real transition. And I think that we're going to start to beat states without it being a per capita analysis, because we're small, 2 million people. I think that we're going to win the race on these transitions. Now, a lot of it depends on our transmission. Nobody wants those either, because they...
Transition lines coming through communities, they look ugly.
And they are emitters. I mean, even when you put green electrons on, there is no completely universal simple issue. And that's because we waited too long. But I want New Mexico to lead the country, and we can make all of it better while we lean really heavily into renewables, including individual responsibility, and we've got more good solar policies and practices than certainly any of our neighboring states, but most states in the country. And I'm going to keep doing just that. And I also want folks to know, governors are not omnipotent. And I don't have the power on private land or with Texas or with anyone to do all of that stuff. And it is simple. And in a weak moment, of course, when I look at my grandchildren, I just want to wave a magic wand, and I want there to be no more carbon emitted anywhere in the world. But I don't have that. But I can be aggressive and pragmatic, and I can do my part to save the earth and to make sure that New Mexico leads in that space.
There is a movement up here this session to help the legislature get more done. Senator Peter Wirth told us he wants 3 things in terms of modernization: paid legislators, paid staff for those lawmakers, and longer sessions, 60-day sessions every year. You are an ambitious leader, and you had a big agenda this session. Do lawmakers need all of that to keep up with you?
Right. They've managed, even so, and actually Leader Wirth said this morning, and so did at the Presbyterian prayer breakfast, the governor's prayer breakfast, that we've gotten a lot done, more than probably all of the predecessors. I have a tendency to push hard and try to get everything done. I want it all. I want perfection. And I would suspect that there's a lot of governors out there, but you worry about the political ramifications when you push too hard, and I haven't been very good about worrying about that. So I don't think you need 60 days every time, because they get it done. But I don't have the pressure of trying to get it all done. And I do think that when it's fast and it's furious, it can lead to more tension and sometimes not as deliberative an environment. I certainly wouldn't stand in the way of those efforts. But the one thing that's very personal, that I don't know how they'll find the balance. These are professionals who dedicate their lives in a voluntary way year-round to policymaking. It doesn't end. No staff, they don't get paid, and it minimizes where you can work, because you're voting on all sorts of issues and regulatory aspects that could affect a business that you might be in. So it really hamstrings who can be a policymaker. When we make it full-time, or nearly full-time, or change it so that it's more time, and when we pay the legislators, because I think that's inevitable, because these are professionals, it won't be as friendly and it won't be as inviting. It'll be a different format. Look at Congress, look at legislatures around the world. They get a little bit more complicated and a little bit more formal. And for a state that prides itself on relationships, and I have kids up here all day, every day, I love it. And I wonder if all those kids are going to get to come or if they have to make appointments. And is it really Education Day or is it some other day?
But I mean, do we want it to be comfortable or do we want to get stuff done?
I think you can do both. So when they become that paid, more typical legislature that shows respect to the policymakers, my hope, I probably won't be here, but my hope is they keep it informal and they keep it kind and that they remember that they did a lot even without that and they're capable of remarkable things.
Before we get out of here, we're halfway through the short session. What are 3 things you absolutely have to have before the gavel is down?
Well, I've made it really clear that this public safety agenda is serious. And while these gun bills are moving, there are others. So I want the full gamut, right? So increase penalties where they should be. It's certainly not revising the whole criminal code so that we're just doing that. And I need more money for kids, for after school programs. Those aren't funded. If you're going to really do the whole effort, I need CYFD fully funded. I need to make sure that my police retention and recruitment fund is full. It's working. We have 500 new officers. Why would you stop doing that now? I want the other 500. And I want to make sure that as we start to negotiate the tax package, that all the environmental incentives are in that tax package. And last but not least, this strategic water supply, I need to keep explaining it. I need to make sure that any of the constructive criticism about what it could do, that I do my work to convince New Mexicans. I believe in a state that doesn't have enough water, that this is a game changer that protects first and foremost consumers and families, improves the health of kiddos, and creates that real transition into an incredible economic powerhouse, and that strategic water effort will lend itself to the rest of the West and to places like Africa. And I'm really excited about that work, and taxpayers don't front a nickel, not until we get something that we want. And I'm going to fight hard to make sure that that gets upstairs.
Governor, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you very much.
One major proposal did meet an early end. That's Senate Bill 122, which would have required defendants in some felony cases to convince judges that they aren't a danger to the public in order to be released from jail before trial. That's instead of the state being required to prove the opposite, which is how it works now. The Senate Health and Public Affairs Committee voted 5-4 to table the measure, meaning it's as good as dead. But when it comes to making it harder for violent offenders to get out ahead of trial, the governor says that she's not done. She told our Gwyneth Dolan this week that some version of the bill might make a comeback, but couldn't provide many details. The deadline for filing new legislation has already passed, which means the governor and her allies would have to use a procedural trick to resurrect the bill. Take a listen.
Democrats have blocked you on some of your proposals like pretrial detention. Now, judges do already have the power to do this if prosecutors can prove that it's necessary. But some Democrats up here just insist that it is unconstitutional. Why keep pushing for it?
Well, because I've seen the difference it makes. Even today in Albuquerque was the only place we're doing it, with young people who are involved in gun violence. You know, we're now detaining them. And 100 people, we can show you, have recommitted a crime, and many of them violent crime. I think the debate, just as I described, got too far on either side. We do have an obligation and a constitutional requirement to protect people from being detained unconstitutionally. You are guilty, you are innocent until proven guilty. No one wants that standard to be eroded in any context, and if we did, the feds would hold us accountable. But you also have to be clear when you have repeat offenders and you have violent offenders and the police stop arresting them and people stop calling 911, now we have a real problem in our communities. So we're fighting on the fringes. I think maybe we've been approaching the dialogue about this not as effectively as we could have, and that is this, that I'm still sort of in that framework of it's got to be all one way. Look, we don't want anyone innocent who isn't a real threat being held unconstitutionally, or even if that wasn't the standard. Why would we want that? But if we can talk about it in a way that says we need safeguards for the community, can we describe those safeguards a bit differently so that it cues the judges to ask more serious questions about the patterns of crime? And we train DAs and PDs to engage in that dialogue. I think we could get some better results. We're seeing better results just by talking about it with judges. So I think that's an indication we've potentially made some mistakes. And I want to get it to a place where it becomes routine. Having it be routine means you get it in statute. And I think it doesn't have to just be like the federal standard, which is what I introduced. But stay tuned, because I think we might have another path forward.
We'll wait to see if and when a massaged pretrial detention bill resurfaces, and we'll be sure to let you know if it does. Now, to nail down the thought process behind instituting a stricter system, we turn to Bernalillo County District Attorney Sam Bregman. He's been one of the most vocal salesmen for big changes to pretrial detention in the state. In an interview recorded days before Senate Bill 122 died, Bregman explains what prosecutors must do now in court to keep someone in jail and why he thinks the system needs more protections. Bernalillo County District Attorney Sam Bregman, thanks so much for joining me here on New Mexico in Focus.
It's a pleasure. Good to be here.
Thank you. Now, we just laid out the landscape surrounding pretrial detention and the governor's repeated calls to change it. I'd like to start by asking you to explain how things work now. What exactly must your prosecutors do and prove in court to keep someone in jail before trial?
Well, let's go back a little bit. Bail reform took place several years back, and basically the idea, and I supported bail reform, and I still do, in the sense that nobody should be kept in jail simply because they can't afford to pay bail based on how much money they have. That is an unacceptable result. So we know that there are certain people, however, that because of their actions, because of the charges against them, perhaps because of their violent history, if you will, the charges are so severe in the sense of violence in the community, the safety of the community is at stake. There are certain people that should not be let out pending trial for the safety of the community. So it's a really important issue for us as prosecutors, because we know that too often folks that are violent in nature, folks that have been charged with violent crimes and have a history of violent crimes, while they're waiting for that trial date, they commit another violent crime, and the community suffers deeply because of it. So of course, we have some burdens now, and we welcome any burden under the law that we need to do to keep them held. We file pretrial detention motions currently, which is at our burden basically is to show that based on the charges, based on the history, based on what's going on, there is no reasonable condition that can be put on that defendant to ensure the safety of the community. And because of that, judges have to sit back and make a decision at this point.
So one phrase that we do hear a lot under the current system is catch and release. We've heard it in elections, and the idea there, the perception there is that suspected criminals are often arrested, booked, thrown right back onto the street, regardless of what they're charged with. Is that phrase accurate?
I'm not a big fan of the phrase catch and release, because I think it demeans the criminal justice system. There are a lot of moving parts in the criminal justice system. Our criminal justice system is not perfect, but it's the best that the world's ever known, and I feel very strongly about that. Obviously, someone is presumed innocent until and unless they are proven guilty in a court of law. That's a very important fundamental right that every person in this country has. At the same time, we have seen instances where someone has been released pretrial, and just as I mentioned earlier, they've gone out and committed another horrific crime. And so people get very frustrated about that, rightfully so. The community gets outraged by something like that happening, rightfully so. So we need to do everything we can, I think, and I know that my office is doing that. Our pretrial detention success has gone up 10%, even after we filed more pretrial detention motions this last year than the year before. So we are having some success around the margins.
Those cases that you described, somebody getting out and maybe committing another crime, where is the point of failure in that process?
The point of failure, I don't know if there's a point of failure. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody. And you'll never hear me criticize a court or a judge for a decision they've made in a courtroom. I'm an old school lawyer. I revere judges. I think the world of them. We as prosecutors in Bernalillo County, we'll do our arguing in a courtroom. And the judges will make their decision based on the evidence they have in front of them. Judges live in this community too. They understand the crime problem out there. I don't think I've ever seen a judge that takes it lightly or just flippantly releases somebody just because they can. I think these are well thought out decisions, and sometimes I don't agree with them. But you're not going to hear me complaining about it. You're going to hear me continuing to ensure that our office presents the best possible case, if you will, as far as evidence to show to a judge why this person should be held.
Now, something that you brought up earlier is that 2016 constitutional amendment that overhauled the state's pretrial release system. You said publicly and just now here that you still support it. You and over 80% of New Mexicans voted to give judges the power to hold people in jail before trial. Do you see any contradiction in also supporting a change that kind of turns that idea on its head, forcing defendants to prove that they are not a danger in order to be released?
No, I don't feel that there's any contradiction in the two. I still strongly support the idea of what bail reform was about, and that is nobody should be held incarcerated pending trial just because they can't afford the $100 or the $1,000 bail money that would be necessary to be posted so that they could be released through a bail bonding company. At the same time, though, we also know, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. We also understand that there are certain people, though, because of the violent nature of the crime they're accused of, or because of their history in violent crime, or because of their history in failing to ever follow a court order. In other words, they don't show up for court when they've been released before in a lower level case. They have a history of giving the middle finger, if you will, to a court and saying, I'm not going to listen to whatever you tell me. They have a history of cutting off an ankle bracelet, an ankle monitor that tracks GPS where someone is.
Now, in June of last year, UNM's Institute for Social Research put out data showing that pretrial detention in Bernalillo County, it's been up since you've been DA. Is that not evidence that the system is working right now, and perhaps an argument against further change?
I think it's evidence that our prosecutors are doing a heck of a good job over in the district attorney's office. They're focused like a laser beam on trying to make sure we keep every single person who's a threat to the community held if they're facing severe criminal charges. I think it's a testament to how hard they work. I think it's also a testament to a recent Supreme Court case from the state, that Joe Anderson, that the Supreme Court just ruled on. But I don't think it's a testament that says we can't do better.
The pretrial detention bill, in its original form of a rebuttable presumption at least, split the Democratic Party, with many members concerned that it would violate the state constitution. In an interview also recorded before SB 122 was tabled, Gwyneth caught up with Senate Majority Leader Peter Wirth to talk about why he didn't see eye to eye with the governor or DA Bregman.
Albuquerque District Attorney Sam Bregman told us on the show this week he needs help keeping the most violent offenders in jail before they're found guilty. Federal courts can do it. Why should we not have a rebuttable presumption and force defendants to prove that they are not a danger before we let them out of jail?
So the answer is the New Mexico Constitution. In our Constitution, we create a burden of proof and we place it on the prosecutors to show by clear and convincing evidence that someone is dangerous. Prior to that constitutional amendment, anyone that was dangerous could bail out and be on the street. We created a mechanism to hold dangerous defenders, and I want to encourage and commend DA Bregman for the job he has done in using the tool that's available. My feeling is we need to get him the resources to be able to implement the constitutional framework that's there.
Now, he told us he respectfully disagrees with that opinion. He thinks it is constitutional and the state Supreme Court should decide.
Well, again, I think that that's something we'll debate here, and obviously you've got a lot of lawyers that disagree, and I respectfully disagree with his opinion on that, and we'll continue to have the discussion.
Legislators have just 2 more weeks to pass bills and send them to the governor's desk for her signature. We'll keep you updated through the session's last day on February 15th. Now we head from Santa Fe to Albuquerque, where news of a federal corruption investigation into the APD DWI unit broke 2 weeks ago. So far, FBI agents have raided the homes and offices of multiple police officers, a well-known local criminal defense attorney, and his paralegal. Shortly after, DA Sim Bregman dismissed more than 150 drunk driving cases, saying he had no choice once he learned about the federal investigation. It's a fast-moving story that's seen a lot of back and forth among officials at the city, county, and federal levels, but they've given us few hard facts. That means almost everything we know is thanks to the work of journalists. The Albuquerque Journal's Matthew Risen and Elise Kaplan of City Desk ABQ have been out front of many of the developments. The former colleagues sat down this week with executive producer Jeff Proctor to break down the facts, the questions, and the future flowing from this explosive story.
Elise, Matt, it's great to have you both here with me today. I really appreciate you both coming down to share your reporting on this very important, very, very crazy story. Thanks for coming.
Of course, thank you for having us.
So one of the things from where I'm sitting that makes this a super crazy story is the paucity of official information that's come out, right? There's been lots of finger pointing, lots of suggestion, some recriminations even at this point, but no one has come out and said like exactly what the hell this thing is. I want to acknowledge right now that that could be totally different by the time people see this conversation. But for right now, Elise, what do we know in terms of hard facts?
Yeah, I think we know several things to start off with. We know that the FBI searched and raided the homes of some APD DWI unit officers and the office of a local attorney, Thomas Clear. We know that the FBI is then investigating these officers, and it seems to be the allegations that seem to be swirling around within the legal community seem to point to that there is some kind of collusion between the defense attorney and the officers to maybe get cases dismissed or get favorable outcomes. We also now know that in November, the district court flagged that one of their former employees had a concerning interaction with one of the DWI officers who has been named in this investigation, who we have named in this investigation, and that officer kind of had hinted that he could get the case dropped if he hired a certain lawyer. And we know that 150 DWI cases have been dropped, so that's also a huge deal that's going to have consequences kind of rolling on down the line.
And has obviously led to some of the dot connecting, right? You've got this piece, this piece, this piece, they seem to be connected. Let's look through the other end of the kaleidoscope. Matt, what don't we know, and what would you like to know right now at this stage?
I mean, we don't know how exactly this all played out, and if there was different mechanisms through which this played out with, if the allegations to the attorneys and the officers. We don't know how high up it went. We don't know who might have known higher up within the department or within any other agencies. We don't really know how much investigation was going into it on APD's side when allegations first kind of arose earlier that apparently were vague. We just don't know how far this goes, and that's I think what I would like to know the most is where does this stop? Where these allegations lead us? Who all was who had knowledge of this? And
so the timelines and the scope at this point are the parts that are really, really still fuzzy. Another thing I want to acknowledge right now is that we know most of what we know because of the work of journalists, including yourselves. So I want to ask sort of a journalism question. In a story like this that is so dangerous, so sensitive, I mean, we're talking about the feds investigating cops and attorneys, and with nobody speaking officially, confirming details, things like that. And I want both of you to weigh in on this. How do you decide that you've got enough to publish another story that turns the wheel in a story like this? What's your process to know that you can publish something that's true?
You mean as far as identifying people and mechanisms happening?
Yeah.
Basically, I think to be sure of something, we hear a lot of things and we don't know if they're true or not. And some ways in which we'll find out is we will kind of confirm them through background or off the record with others to kind of get our own peace of mind. But how we found out about these people and who they were and stuff was through property searches, online databases, we had an idea of where the FBI had gone in some instances, and we looked up those addresses and we found out like who was the owner of those homes and basically like found their phone numbers, called them. Some of them we called and basically asked and had them, one of these officers confirm to us that they were on leave as a result of this investigation. And then, even if you put those pieces together, we're like, FBI went to this home, that this person lives at this home, you still go back and, through the proper channels to, even if it's off the record, to just get that peace of mind of like, yes, like this is the correct person, like you are not wrong, and like this is who was like the target, this is the house that was searched. And that just, I think you just need that security blanket. Even if you know it in your head, it's like, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove, and I think you just need that like background security blanket to get from A to B, unlike from like getting to knowing it to proving it in publishing.
And that's the old editor line of like, yeah, great story, better if true, right? Mm-hmm. And so I want people to like be crystal clear here. You guys aren't guessing, you're not making things up. And you just described the way in which you were able to publicly identify the officers who appear to be targets in the investigation. One thing that's interesting to me is that the two of you used to be a team at the Journal, and now you're competing on this story. Elise, you published the names of the officers as well, but you got there in a really different fashion. What were the breadcrumbs for you?
Yeah, first off, I want to say I think like we're kind of competing on this story, but I also think that like competition makes transparency better, makes accountability better. So I think we're all working for the greater good in this competition. I think Matt actually named the officers first, and I'm sure anyone who went through the list of 150 dismissed DWI cases could notice that there was a very clear pattern. Those 4 officers were named time and time and time again, some of them, dozens and dozens of times. And so we had an idea just from that. And then what we did is we went to the district attorney's office and asked them for the Giglio list. District attorneys have to keep a list internally or publish it as they are now doing to
thank you, by the way, for making them public.
You're welcome. All it took was a story. So district attorneys have to keep records to share with the defense attorneys about which officers they believe might have credibility issues. That could be, that they've been accused of lying in the past, or they've been found to have been lying in the past. They've had concerning social media. It can be all sorts of different things. But in this case, as soon as we saw that these 4 officers were named on the Giglio list very recently, after the investigation started, that for us felt enough to go forward with it and say like, okay, here we have the DA saying that these officers are untrustworthy and that's why they're on the list and that's why he had to dismiss the cases. Yeah. So at that point we felt like we had enough to publish their names.
And they're recent additions to the Giglio list too, right? They're the 4 names at the bottom, same names we're seeing in the dismissal lists.
Yeah.
I think that's super interesting that you guys got to the same place, but you did it in different ways. Let's shift gears just a little bit here. I want to talk about the investigation, and in fact, there are 2 investigations. So right now we are looking at parallel but different investigations. Matt, can you explain what the difference is in those 2 investigations, who's conducting them, and how the stakes are different in particular?
So what we know is from APD, according to APD, in December 2022, they basically got some kind of, and this is how their investigation kind of molded to what it is today. Like basically December 2022, they got a tip off that some kind of corruption, misconduct was happening involving DWI officers, but they said they had the details wrong, and it was also vague, and apparently it involved bars and not traffic stops somehow. And so basically, like, they told us that they started a preliminary investigation to see if it warranted a full internal investigation. And then apparently, I don't know what happened there exactly, but fast forward to October, and as Elise reported, this court employee made a official complaint against an officer alleging like a similar thing to what they had heard before, but more detailed, and it kind of, APD has said that connected the dots for them. What it also did was the FBI learned about this, and they had been doing their own investigation, and we don't know how long, I don't know how long they have been investigating this. But basically, you have the FBI then calling APD and saying, hey, there's this internal complaint filed, we're doing an investigation on this. And, from both agencies have said they started working together then, but their investigations are different. APD's is internal. These officers are on leave, obviously that could lead to terminations, discipline. The FBI is a criminal investigation, which could lead to criminal charges. I mean, those are like the distinct differences between them.
So the stakes are somebody's job versus somebody's freedom is
Yes.
what we're talking
Yeah.
about here. Okay, so the impacts have already been pretty substantial in this case. We've got 150 DWI cases dismissed. We've got cops on leave. We've got city councilors saying that this may be the biggest public corruption scandal in APD history. There's a lot going on, right? One thing I want to ask you, Elise, is what are you hearing from sources and readers about what this does to credibility for law enforcement in our community?
Yeah, I think it's a black eye. I think there's no way around it. Even though we don't know exactly what happened yet, we know enough to know that the FBI is investigating officers, and the officers are the ones you want not to be investigated. You think
You want them
you want them doing the
investigating.
you want them doing the right thing. So I think it's automatically going to be a problem. Also, the department is under 10 years at this point of a consent decree, and I think that we will have to at some point step away from this and think about like accountability systems and kind of like what got missed, and also how is the department kind of policing itself and investigating itself as well, and to kind of catch these things earlier before it becomes a criminal investigation or before it gets to where it did.
And I want to get back to that in just a second, but one of the big things we don't know yet, Matt, you alluded to this a second ago, are the timelines. It's sort of the old Howard Baker line from the Watergate era. What did Chief Medina know and when did he know it? Same goes for DA Bregman. Why is it important for us to know the answers to those questions?
I mean, it goes to what Elise said about accountability. Like, I mean, you're supposed to hold your officers accountable. I mean, there's systems in place to investigate things like this. And there's systems in place that are supposed to catch things like this. And I mean, it sounds like maybe they didn't in this case, but I think we need to know who know what, how strong what they knew was and what they did about it. And I mean, without knowing that, I can't judge now, but I think the cards are going to fall sometime, and I mean we're going to find out. But I think it's just huge from a leadership perspective. You want leaders to be holding officers accountable, or their prosecutors, whoever isn't you just want there to be stopgaps to not have this ever happen again. And I think in addition to holding leaders accountable, you also want to make sure that what are they going to do now to make sure that whatever fell through the cracks before, if that's what happened, doesn't happen again.
Yeah. So that sort of hints at the possibility of potential institutional failure here. I want to end with just a little bit of extra context. First of all, what we're talking about here are not shoplifting cases. These are DWI cases in a state that has a long and tortured history with alcohol-related traffic fatalities and things like that, right? Officers missing court or pretrial interviews has been a known cause for these cases to be dismissed for decades. I wrote about this back in 2005 when I had the job that you used to have and that Matt has now at the Albuquerque Journal. There were supposed to have been some guardrails put in place in the aftermath of those stories, and that was 20 years ago. You had a story published this week, Elise, in which you sort of dug into that. What did you find out about what's supposed to be in place to catch something like this before you've got guys in windbreakers kicking people's doors down?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you, Past Jeff, for writing all those articles. They're very helpful starting off points, and I did a deep dive through all of them. So basically what I found in 2007, there was a report given to the Metro Court that said, it laid out a bunch of different ways that they could address these, the higher dismissal rate. But the one that I was most interested in was one that said Metro Court should maybe publish a list of cases where officers failed to appear and that dismissed the case. And when I asked Metro Court about that, this week, they said that, the criminal justice partners decided ultimately it would be better for the Bernalillo County District Attorney's Office to be kind of in charge of that, because the Metro Court kind of wants to stay removed from it. They want to be impartial, and they don't want to kind of be in charge of that part of the process. So it seems like now, since then, the District Attorney's Office, if an officer missed a hearing, they would send a form email basically to the department to let them know. But then in 2014, it came out that maybe that system wasn't working very well. There's high turnover in DA's offices. They weren't catching everything necessarily. I also don't think it really accounted for other things like, not turning over discovery or not attending pretrial interviews, which is very different from a hearing. Those are like private interviews with attorneys. And that's kind of where I am now. I'm hoping to find out a lot more what happened after 2014. It seemed like APD was saying that this was a problem, but I don't know yet if there were any answers to that yet. I have been told that APD will have more answers to that soon, but they're still trying to figure out, I guess, exactly what the process is. But it seems like it wasn't working effectively if such a high number of cases involving certain officers were getting dismissed. And that didn't get red flagged.
Elise, Matt, I really appreciate both of your work on this story. I will certainly be watching and reading for what y'all dig up next. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks to Jeff, Matt, and Elise for that discussion. Understanding how climate change continues to alter New Mexico's landscapes can be a difficult task. Luckily for us, we have Laura Paskus. Jeff recently sat down with Laura to discuss her plans for our land this year as she tackles all things related to climate change and adaptability.
Laura, it's really nice to sit down with you and have a chance to talk about our land for 2024. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, Jeff Proctor.
So I know from conversations that we have had kind of over and over again, not in front of television cameras, that your idea for the year is to really shift the focus of your work back to climate change. What sort of got you thinking about doing that along those lines?
Yeah, so there's such a huge gap between what scientists are telling us we need to do. For example, 2023 was the warmest year on record by far, and scientists keep saying we need to bring greenhouse gas emissions down to zero. We need to be acting very fast, and yet that gap, what politicians are doing, what governments are doing on an international, national, or state scale, we're not doing at all what scientists keep telling us to do. And so for me, for this platform, for our audience in New Mexico, I feel really a moral imperative to be talking about climate change in big picture and regular ways again. Weekly conversations about greenhouse gas emissions, about the impacts of climate change, about the impacts of climate change on our mental health, our spiritual health. So I feel like, for me and what I know and understand is happening, having covered these issues for 20 years, I feel like our audience deserves to understand climate change better.
The moral imperative part certainly tracks. And in terms of the subject matter, all I can really say is, woof. That sounds dark and depressing. Of course, you've never been sort of a happy, fun time journalist, but that's heavy subject matter.
Yeah, I know. And it hurts. As a climate reporter, I have certainly had my ups and downs of feeling like I cannot report on these issues any longer, especially when I hear audience feedback, from people who are paying attention, who are sad, who are depressed, who feel a sense of hopelessness. And really, I feel like for me, I'm coming out the other side of this. It's maybe taken, 20 years, but I refuse to give up on this place that I love, and I refuse to give up on my community and the communities I love here. And so I think it's really important for us to understand what's happening and why it's happening and what's going to continue happening, but to be connecting with our places, our ecosystems, our communities, and one another with a real sense of love and joy and commitment, even if it's hard to feel hopeful. I will not give up on this place, and I will not give up on what I know New Mexicans can do when it comes to climate change.
Laura, one of the things that I have always loved and admired so much about your work is the intentionality with which you approach it. You're also incredibly organized. I've seen your calendar for the year, which makes me feel like the work ahead is going to be more difficult for me because I'm not that organized. But I want you to talk a little bit about how that works for you. How do you decide and settle? What do you mean by following an arc of stories for the course of the year?
So for a long time, I was, one of one or one of two environmental journalists in the state. And that's not the case anymore. There's like a really healthy ecosystem on the media landscape with people covering the environment right now. At Source New Mexico, KUNM, New Mexico Political Report, Searchlight, of course, Susan Montoya Bryan at the Associated Press. Like, there's so many people covering the day-to-day kind of environmental news. So I have a little bit of a luxury that I didn't have in the past, where I can kind of look at the year and be like, water scarcity, fire season, and kind of fill out the arc of the year and try to really provide New Mexicans the information that they need in a climate changed world to be dealing with these impacts of climate change.
I compare your work to what Bill Graham said about the Grateful Dead. You are not the best at what you do, you're the only one who does what you do. So how will the audience feel this differently this year as you shift into this really intentional path? Yeah, I hope that the audience comes along with me on this journey. I want to talk about some hard things. I want to talk about how climate change affects our mental health. I want to talk about that gap between what scientists are telling us we need to do and what our politicians and lawmakers and decision makers are actually doing. I hope that people will come along and watch these segments or read our newsletter or, follow us on social media and really talk to their friends and family members and have these deeper conversations in their own homes. And I always love hearing from people, whether that's through social media or email. I want to know what people are feeling and seeing. It isn't, even though we're a broadcast television program, it's not just we broadcast out. I want to be hearing from people as well. Let's talk about that for just a moment. Of course, we will continue to air Our Land pieces on New Mexico in Focus, which is incredibly gratifying for me. How else can folks interact with your work, consume your work?
So as a print reporter at heart, I will always be happiest sort of writing words down and connecting with audiences that way through the written word, so they can subscribe to our weekly newsletter, Our Land Weekly. Can also follow us on Instagram. It's Our Land NM on Instagram. We've got a YouTube channel. I think the newsletter is a really good way to stay on top of like the latest research on climate, the latest reporting on climate, and kind of how I try to connect all these things together for our New Mexico audience.
Well, I'm incredibly excited about the year ahead, as I have been with so many years of your work in the past. So thanks for talking about it a little bit.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks again to Laura and Jeff for that discussion. We close this week remembering the life of acclaimed writer N. Scott Momaday. The Pulitzer Prize winner died last month at his home in Santa Fe at 89. He was a pioneer of Native American literature, and we wanted to end the show today with a few words on writing from Momaday during a 2019 interview at that Santa Fe home with New Mexico in Focus correspondent Russell Contreras, who was working for the Associated Press at the time.
If you want to write, you should write. I think that one of the most important things I can advise young people to do is to exercise writing, get something down on paper and keep at it until it takes a life of its own, which it will do.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the viewers like you.